numbers. It's like nothing. Like at EA, this 15% layoffs every year, clockwork. November, 15% staff reduction. And we just laid off 10 people, and we were like, you guys are not people first.
Yes.
The reason I'm telling you this story is how difficult it is to live your values. And when you don't live your values, you lose people, you lose confidence and motivation and engagement super fast. It's very hard to live by them, and it's super fast to lose people if you don't follow them. So
you gotta be sure what you decide those are.
Make sure those values are something you truly believe in, because ultimately you may have to sacrifice the company in order to live to those values. People first, and then you lay people off, and we did it because it was kind of a tough year, and those people were not engaged, and frankly, I thought it was like high time that we have a layoff because there were underperformers that were never laid off, because we were people first. Every value will have positive and negative connotations on your culture, and even though, respecting your people, of course you would want that kind of company. It's logical. But when you think of what it means, it can have profound adverse effects, like never being able to let someone go. If somebody's underperforming, you're going to try to grow him into a person that is performing. That's what people first is. What if the person doesn't want to? Well, you shit out of luck because you're still people first.
Yes.
And laying that person off will tell the other people on the team that you're not respecting the people, you're not giving the guy another chance, the guy or whatever. So tough, but values create culture, and culture creates engagement. Okay, so that's for a larger studio. For an indie studio, you get maximum engagement through the product. Your product is your culture, because most likely, that's the only thing you have going. If you're like a 2 or 3 person team, you can't really do work for hire. I mean, you could if you stop working on your product, but assuming that you are saying, we're going to work on that product no matter what, the product itself will be your recruitment tool, will be the identity of your studio. You'll basically live and die by your game. That's why it's so traumatic for indie studios to kill their own games, because their entire
world
psychological profile is built around that we're going to make sci-fi, cyberpunk, RPG. This is who we are. We're cyberpunk developers.
Right.
And it's hard. It's just hard to give up your identity and say, okay, we're going to work on some other medieval combat game. So that's what I've noticed within these studios. It's like the product becomes the identity of the studio, and then you will get really talented people to journey you through the product. They'll be inspired by the art. Maybe you put a trailer out and be like, oh shit, I really want to work on a game like that. And they will quit their job at Ubisoft or EA or you name it, and they'll come and work for you, and they will not get paid because they're working on the game of their dreams. And that's cool. It's cool. But ultimately, you would want to pay them eventually. So I can assure you that enthusiasm tends to run out. And then you find yourself in a situation where you're cycling through staff. It's hard to be in. Yeah. Okay. Yeah?
Yeah, that was a good one.
Thank you. Good question. All right. So we greenlight the concept on the basis of the PRD, and we're moving on to prototype. Okay, what's different in a prototype? Well, obviously you have the prototype that you created. You create a target render. So ideally, this is an in-game representation of how your game will look like. It can be just a scene. I have greenlit projects that only have concept art and mood board at this stage as well. But ideally, you have a target render. Like you're making a 3D game, build a 3D scene in engine to show that you can actually do it. This is particularly important when you're doing something that your team hasn't done before. Right? If you've never made a 3D game, I will never allow you to go into pre-pro without 3D art in engine. If you have done that in the past, I know you've worked on many projects. I kind of know that you got it. And I'm mostly interested then to see what your art, game art will look like. And you know, the mood board will take me halfway there, but the other half is really your concept art. Because you want your game to stand out, right? No matter what you do, you want your game to stand out, to introduce something new. And so that's starting time. You can push that into concept if you want. And you know, with everything that I know right now, I would probably push a requirement for concept art at the concept phase. And that allows me to bring an artist or a couple of artists into the concept team in the very beginning. And that would be good because the artist can contribute to design too. You know, they can influence the design. Like, how about we change the setting? Because this kind of setting will be more interesting for visual impact. You know, that is a design decision that an artist can make, right? So that would be a change that I would make to my own GDF based on further, I don't know, knowledge. But you have the prototype, ideally in engine as well, like straight into Unity, don't mess around with other. There are prototyping tools that you can use, but why do that? I mean, in this day and age, should be easy. Financial opportunity assessment. Don't worry about that. We pushed all of that into the pre-ideation. We're not going to update it there. TDD, that's very important. So during the prototype phase, you actually have engineers building your prototype in engine. You can use those engineers to also create the technical documentation. How are you going to architect your system? What are you going to use? What set of solutions you are going to use on the back end? You may have a multiplayer engine, and you have a database, and how do you connect all of these? I'm not very technical in nature, so I'm not going to dive in deep into your many options for setting up your game. But you know, for Rumble Heroes, for example, you use the highly modified version of the Photon engine, which gave us out of the box some fairly rudimentary multiplayer. They gave us leaderboards. They gave us community features, like creating guilds and whatnot, and a chat system. And that was good, you know, that was a good start, but we wanted that rudimentary multiplayer to become more complex, believe it or not. We wanted to be synchronous, real-time PvP multiplayer. We're not going to settle for asynchronous, right? So then our technical director spelled out how we're going to achieve this. You know, how are we going to architect and build the system on top of Photon source code. And here is the developer due diligence. It's basically if we're going to use external development to support the team, which we, frankly, at Amber, we often do. You know, we'll often work with an external partner. In the past, we were doing quite a bit of art outsourcing. We didn't have a lot of artists in-house. And so you'd want to, you know, kind of figure out who, out of all the vendors in the world, and there are thousands, who is the best suited for the work. And sometimes we will straight up co-develop, meaning that we maintain a core team in Bucharest, and we will have other teams around the world helping out. And if you're a remote studio, by the way, it's external development. Let me stop here for a second and talk about it. At Amber, we've isolated 3 types of external development. There's the classic external development system where you contract a studio to build your game. And we do that sometimes. We subcontract a studio. In that format, we have a producer at Amber that oversees the process, and basically all the work is done by the external studio. It's as we are contracted by publishers sometimes to build a game for them, we will sometimes contract another studio to build work for us. So we call that external development. Then we have co-development, which is a mix of resources. We have a core team at Amber and another team augmenting that core team somewhere around the world. And by the way, this happens irrespective of geography. Like, one thing that I find really amazing about the games industry is how global it is. It just doesn't matter where you are. You are going to work with any company around the world. Yeah, sure, there's a factor of time zone, you know, the fact that you're in the same time zone or a close time zone. There's some familiarity with that, but I have to tell you, when you co-develop with a studio that is 10 hours ahead or behind you, that's a great advantage, because you can do your homework every day and then pass on further homework to the other studio who executes that, and then at the time you come back to work the next day, that work is already done and you continue it. So it creates a nice cycle where, like, basically the sun never sets over your development. Somebody around the world is always working on it. Okay, and the fullest expression of what I would call external development is something we term remote development, which is all the resources are in the cloud. And I have to tell you that in this day and age, you don't necessarily have to be in the same studio to make games. You can have people around the world working in a freelancing model, collaborating on making a game. And actually, quite a few indie studios have that model. You know, it may be that, you know, you have 2 people or the core of the team that is in Mexico City, right? But everyone else is in the cloud, right? Some Pakistani wizard developers, some Indonesian amazing artists, you know, some Argentinian writer, some UK-based like electronica, sound engineer, you know. So everybody like contributing to making the game, and that's the third form. And to be completely honest, it's not easy to make the third form work. You know, we're talking about culture, motivating people. Super hard to do. Super hard. I would say impossible. The only thing that you have left is what the indie studios have, and that's the product. If the product is extraordinary, the product itself will create a culture even in a remote environment. But yeah, it's difficult to get going. However, extremely empowering, because you have access theoretically to all talent around the world at all price points, depending on what you need, depending on what you want, depending on your budgets. You will always find someone willing to work on your game. And sometimes you will even find people willing to work for your game for free, because maybe they're students and they want the experience. Maybe they are senior, but they love your game and they always dream to work on your game. I would never build a business plan based on that. You know, like this is almost utopian. It does happen sometimes, but it's utopian. You need to be able to pay people. I think to have a remote workforce system that produces results, you have to pay them. Otherwise, it's hard to get people to give you stuff on time, be serious about it.
And mid and long term, it's hard to just like accumulate value, right? I mean, something that you can sell afterwards, or some sort of exit, or it's some sort of strategy. I mean, it's harder to sell a network that's dispersed, or not. I mean,
it depends. For especially in an indie game development environment, your exit is your product.
Right. That's it.
Kidding. You know, if your product is a commercial success, you can retreat from remote workforce and build your own studio. Like money cures all ills, right? If you have money, you can do whatever you want. But up until, so it's hard for an indie studio that doesn't have a portfolio to get any sort of investment. To get a publishing deal is almost impossible. You will have to find a way to build your first game at cost, or by doing services. Services, it's a lower barrier of entry. But building a new product and trying to get a publishing deal for it is exceedingly difficult. I don't want to say impossible, because it has happened, but usually it only happens if you have some type of kind of legendary, super senior group of core people that have built games that made like gazillion dollars. And even with that, it's hard, because investors will look at it, and people are smart in the industry. They know that just having the people means nothing. Because it's not just having the people, it's about having a team.
Yes.
That's why teamwork is the first value at Amber. You can have the best people in the world. If they're not a team, you cannot make games. And we've seen that ourselves, and experienced that thing. So anyway, short deviation. All right, so prototype. You coming into my green light with a nice prototype, feels fun. By the way, at this stage, you are able to test, right? You have the prototype. We're getting into the concept testing phase. You're going to expose it to some people. And I personally would ask to see that how have people reacted to it. It's another reason why you want to conduct this session with real people as opposed to just play testing. You can film them. You can present those reactions then in a clip edited for the executives. You can, basically say, people freaking loved it. And nothing is more powerful than showing like a sequence of 10 people saying, oh my God, this is so much fun, right? That is a guaranteed green light approval right there. Cool. Pre-production is next. But before we do so, I'm looking at the watch and I'm seeing that it's a great time to take a break. So let's do it. 15-minute break. Please be back. Real time, not Mexican.
Not ahorita.
Actual 15.
Ellos, si no van a ver esto,
Está chido, ¿verdad?
digo, no le estoy tomando foto.
Sí, hemos dado.
Está chido, si me gustaría quedarme mañana, pues no necesito.
Te abrazo, güey, estamos en el
Yo te voy a jalar en otro lado, pero
que es en otro lado, pero es lo que te digo, esto vale la pena, güey. ¿Cuándo es esto? ¿Quién te enseña esto que sí hay corridos? ¿Quién tiene un estudio de 400 cabrones?
Ni todos los pinches consultores con los que hemos trabajado, pero
Yo con
aquí
aquí.
ni el 10% de lo que
Valioso, ¿verdad? Te dije, güey.
digo que está muy al grano. ¿Quieres ir con café?
Refil, vamos. Vamos a hacer refil.